Hello there.
What is up, Internet?
Is that your intro?
What? Hello, Internet. Welcome to Comics and Coffee on Hyper Rabbit Power Go. We're going to talk about some comic books. We took last week off for the holiday.
I said it. Yesterday we did our trailer reaction for Black Widow, and I used the term "it's been a hot minute," and someone left a comment of like, "Why do people say that?" I'm like, "Because it's funny, humor." And it's been a hot minute.
No, I thought you were about to give me like this really long story on exactly how Hot Minute came about.
I have no idea.
Like, where does Hot Minute come from? You brought that up as if you were about to like drop some knowledge on me.
Hot Minute, New York Minute, all these minutes.
I want to know.
They're just a delay in time. That's all they mean. Just a delay in time.
Well, it's been a while. I'm posting
minute
in Discord right now, so
I usually say hot minute when it's been like a long time since we've done something and we're doing something spicy.
I don't see anyone talking in the YouTube chat yet, and once again, we should be live on YouTube. And my end, it says that we're live on YouTube. So if we're not, we have a serious issue with YouTube Live. So on my screen, it says we're live on YouTube. So let us know in the chat if it's working out for you there. We're excited to be back. Oh, it's up. Oh, I guess nobody's watching. That's the difference. It's just nobody watching. You take a week off. Well, thank you, Twitch chat, for jumping over to the YouTube chat to tell us it's working. We appreciate that. But I'm excited to talk to you all today. I feel like we took last week off, but it allowed me to catch up on so many comic books. Mm-hmm. I read a shit ton of comic books when I was in that cabin out in the woods.
Nice. I did not. I didn't read a thing when I was gone.
That's like all I did. There was no TV up there, no internet. I read a lot of comic books.
You were also snowed in for 4 days.
We were snowed in, yeah. Everybody's like, oh, let's play card games and drink.
Isn't that kind of the thing you don't want to be doing when you're on vacation?
What?
I feel like we're so like surrounded by gaming and movie stuff. That's kind of the last thing I want to do when I go on vacation. I just want to spend time with my friends and my family.
Oh no, I just want to read comics.
You and I are very different.
Oh yeah, I don't like socializing. You know this.
Oh, I know this for sure.
I don't like.
Zach runs an entertainment company. He doesn't like to talk to people.
Nope. I'm like, God, how many people are going to be in my house tonight? I'm going to go up to my room.
Everyone.
Hey, you guys want to go out for a drink? No.
When I first met Zach, I thought he hated me for years.
A lot of people do.
And Hector was just, nah, man, it's just how Zach is. Oh, he just has that bitch face all the time?
Yeah.
Cool.
No, I do. A lot of people react the way you react.
Yeah. And now we have conversations through the door while he's pooping, so it's pretty good.
I'm in my element.
There's an element for sure.
There's a difference. That's me in my element. And, you know, if all of our talent just tried to talk to me while I was pooping, we'd have a much better relationship.
Be in your zone, on your time.
On my time. What are you drinking today, Adam?
What is this? Dunkin' Donuts hot chocolate and Dunkin' Donuts coffee of some kind.
You mixed them?
Yeah, I like my mochas.
I have the Dunkin' Donuts peppermint bark.
I almost put that in there. I think that probably would have been tasted pretty good.
Peppermint bark. With the hot chocolate? Yeah, probably.
Probably would have been pretty damn good.
Okay, so what are we talking about today? We usually get to entertainment news before we get into our comic books. I'll let you know after we get through the entertainment news all the books I read over the break. I was so excited to catch up on books. I know we want to talk about The Watchmen, but I'm very upset that I just found out 15 minutes ago Adam has not watched the last episode of The Watchmen, like he had other shit to do that was more important. I'm serious. If I had known that last night, I would have been banging on your door in the middle of the night, be like, Adam, wake up!
I honestly don't remember what I did last night. What happened? What did we do yesterday? Oh, I filmed a bunch of stuff. That's what happened.
Yeah, you were working.
I genuinely forgot until right this moment.
You were putting things up on YouTube.
That's right, I was.
You guys filmed until like 9 p.m. and then you were putting things up on YouTube.
Yeah, we actually did a lot of stuff. So there was quite a few things we wanted to drop today, but because we're doing the show live and we prioritized the trailers over some things, we released a trailer reaction for Black Widow. We did a trailer reaction for No Time to Die, which we just put up about an hour ago. Tomorrow we're going to drop our review for the season 2 wrap up of Titans, and then we're going to drop all the podcast episodes with that. So if you missed out on Patreon, if you didn't jump on the train to listen to us talk about it every single week, you missed out. You're a little behind. And we're also going to be dropping the episode, our review of Friday's episode of The Mandalorian, and then we'll make last week's episode, Chapter 3, public. So if you're not on Patreon, you should consider it. You'll get early access to all that stuff before everybody else, and you can talk to us about every single episode on there.
I kind of agree with Mopar in the YouTube chat. You just want to watch it, and we'll wait.
Sure.
Just turn around.
Just turn around, just watch. We should just have...
The last episode is... Oh, good!
Watch along of watching The Watchmen. That's what we should have done a podcast on. A watch along of watching The Watchmen.
Yeah, we should have. We've discussed this many times in this house, how frustrated everyone is that there's a Titans podcast and not a Watchmen podcast. I don't think anyone could have predicted that we would be way more excited and all we want to talk about is The Watchmen. I don't think anyone could have predicted. From the first trailer, It was like, this looks good, but not to the level of, holy shit, this is art. I want to talk about it nonstop. This is so good.
I will say, I was completely not excited for the Watchmen TV show because I thought, what are you doing? What are you doing? Yeah. How are you going to take the... It was also kind of unclear for the first few months that the news came out of, like, is it an adaptation of the original graphic novel? Is it going to be a sequel?
Redux,
is it a reboot?
Whatever.
Yeah, is it a sequel to the movie instead of the book? So I was really hesitant about the whole thing. And then Chapter 1 came out, and you watched it, you said it was incredible. And then every week it was like, it's amazing, it's so good, it's so good. And then finally I think it was Chapter 4?
I made you sit down and watch them with me.
Yeah, we watched 5 hours of Watchmen, where we watched, or 4 hours. We watched the first 4 chapters. And then...
That's how I show that I'm a friend with someone.
Yeah, that's right.
I don't want to go to a fucking bar and talk to you. Let's sit and watch The Watchmen together. Where we're not talking...
It's watching Watchmen or talking me through the door while pooping. That's it. That's it. So we watched 4 hours of Watchmen straight, and then we watched 2 hours, episodes 5 and 6. And then by the time we got to episode 6, it was like midnight or 12:30.
You were
and
falling
I was falling asleep, and I was like,
yeah.
I gotta stop. So I got to catch up on 7.
Yeah.
And then there's only, I think, 2 episodes left. Is it 8 or 9 episodes?
There's 2 more.
So it's 9 episodes total.
Oh, shit.
Damn.
I thought it was 10.
But the other thing that, like, we talked about, or I talked about with Augustine and Hector, so we're very close to hitting 400 patrons on Patreon. When we hit 400, we want to make a poll for a new show that we should do a podcast about. Watchmen will very likely be one of the choices on that poll, and we're all very, very certain that it's most likely going to win.
But the show's over.
We still want to go back and do every single episode in podcast form.
Okay.
It's either that, or we have other shows that we're thinking about, like Harley Quinn on DC Universe. Hector said it's very good.
Or hear me out. When Lock and Key drops on
in
Netflix
February?
on February 7th.
So we could do that.
Which I just learned today, and I'm kind of freaking out about it.
So we could do that as a February thing.
Okay.
But I think we want to try to have something kind of locked in, because Mandalorian's going to end on the 28th of December. So we want to try to have something that's either ready to go for the end of this month, or just start something brand new in January.
Okay.
Word.
So, I mean...
But I'm down to do Lock and Key.
If you do Watchmen, I'm going to make you guys let me do it with you. I don't care how angry your fans are. I'm fucking doing it with you. Because I will just be in the background yelling the whole time anyway.
I mean... You love that show so much.
I am going to insert I'm going to finally pull CCO rank and be like, I'm on this show.
I'm inserting myself into you. What? Your podcast. Okay.
Hector, I'm in you. This is happening.
Oh my god. I mean, I had a lot of fun talking with you and Andre about The Mandalorian last week.
Okay, cool, good.
That was a lot of fun.
Hopefully nobody else was angry about it.
My favorite moment was derailing and talking about how Baby Yoda, who the father is of Baby Yoda.
Who fucked to make Baby Yoda?
It was my favorite thing in the world.
Yeah, Andre's so great.
Good. Andre's great. Yeah, I want to have him back again soon.
Andre's really great.
Man, I'm blind as shit. I can't read any of that.
Oh, you can't? Oh, that's right. You have bad vision. Here,
you should do The Witcher later this month. Oh, is that coming out this month?
That's true, dude.
I had a friend. Oh, yeah, it's December 20th, I think.
Yeah.
Dude, I'd be down. I had a friend who went last... You wouldn't?
I wouldn't do it.
Oh, really?
I'm not going to. Find somebody else for that shit.
I had a friend who went to... They did like a fan screening yesterday, and they showed the pilot.
That's true.
He's
Terrence Pryor did too.
Oh, really?
One of our audience members, yeah.
He's really, really picky. Like, he doesn't like a lot of the Marvel stuff because he thinks like it's too much of a departure from the comics. All that stuff. Anyways, he's very, very picky. But he said he really liked the Witcher pilot. So,
Yeah.
and I like Henry Cavill, so I'd be more than willing to give it a shot.
I love this. Bearfader89. It's not Yoda in the Twitch chat.
We know.
Everyone knows that. But also, the only official name that Disney has given us is the Child.
And the only official name of the species that we've ever had in canon was Yoda species.
So, it's a baby Yoda. And nobody's going to call it the Child.
Yeah.
Get with your shit, Disney.
I call it YOLO.
Yeah.
That's good.
The Child.
We've got Yaddle, Yoda, and YOLO.
Just imagine if every time you were talking about baby Yoda, you referenced the Child and how that can easily be construed to be something very different.
Yeah.
But seriously though, The Watchmen. We can't talk about the last episode because you're not caught up, and it would be bad to talk about because of spoilers in general.
What's happening right now?
Yes!
Oh.
Yes! Praise! Yes! Thank you! Thank you! I don't agree with everything you say, but this? Yes. Yes, please.
Who is she talking to?
I don't know. I don't know if she's yelling at me or Zach or the audience.
Whoever made the thumbnail, so I guess it's you?
Fuck me, I guess.
It's you, I guess? I don't agree with everything, but... She just became a YouTube commenter. That was a YouTube commenter in real life.
That's what that feels like.
We could just jumped into your comments, Adam.
That's so funny.
Honestly, though, we've been enjoying Watchmen a lot. Adam is not caught up, so we can't talk about spoilers, but I wouldn't want to, I guess, anyway, if I'm going to try to make myself feel better about this conversation, because people in the chat don't want spoilers yet. So, we can talk about stuff leading up to it. So, heads up, we're probably going to talk about all the way up to the black and white episode, which I believe was episode 6. Just because it has to be talked about. I never imagined the show was going to do what it did. And as Hector said, like, it makes me want to reread The Watchmen immediately. I've read it 3 times, but it reinvigorated, like, it's in a weird way, made me just, like, immediately want to be like, I want to revisit everything. Like, going back and finding a way to visit a character that was never fully fledged out and give it purpose and meaning that adds an extra layer of nobility and moral, like, state. Because that character was always kind of the moral leader and had, you know, this very mysterious Batman-like morality to, like, this is how we do things in the Minutemen.
Yeah.
And the layers that they added to that, oh my God, it just deepens everything so much.
I guess I shouldn't be this. Well, I guess I should be, regardless of the fact that Watchmen is a Vertigo / DC comic book. When the show starts on the very first episode, it felt so much to me, minus of, like, obviously the things that were happening in the very beginning of that episode in Tulsa, but the imagery and the way it's sort of like kind of telling you or showing you that this is somewhat of like their version of a Superman story. And when I first watched that, I thought, oh, this is an interesting imagery. This feels like when Jor-El sends Kal-El to Earth.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I knew the second I saw everything, I was like, oh, Adam's going to love this.
And I didn't say anything when that happened. I just kept to myself. I'm like, all right, maybe this is just like them like paying homage to DC.
You said something.
Did I say something?
Yeah, you did.
Oh, okay, did I? What did I say? Did I say the exact same thing?
Yeah, you were just like, oh, that's very Kal-El.
Okay, so I guess I did say it out loud. And then I thought nothing of it. And I thought, oh, well, it's cool. It's DC, you know, kind of like referencing itself in the past and all that sort of stuff. And then we get to chapter 6. And there was a moment where we're watching the show and you're like, you're going to love this. You're going to love this. You're going to love this. And I'm like waiting for the moment. One thing would happen. I'm like, was this the thing? I look at Zach, no reaction. Next moment, next one. And then you get to the part where he walks by the guy reading Action Comics #1. And I was like, oh shit.
Yeah.
Where's this about to go?
And then you're like Reeves and and you just start going, oh yeah.
It's all these like little pieces. It's like, yeah, all the naming and all this stuff. And all of a sudden it's like they reveal, God, what's the superhero's name? The Hooded Justice. Then the big reveal of the identity, and I was like, oh shit, this is like taking something that I was not expecting and completely like blowing it up and doing something so magnificent and original. I never would have thought of this, and the fact that this was like inspired by this thing that I love, and it just kind of made like the whole thing
even that
feel so fulfilling.
That episode as a singular story, as a 1 hour film.
Oh my
Let's
God.
call it a 1 hour film. You take away everything else. You strip away all these things.
Just focus on
it
that
is
one
just
thing.
so strong to follow his journey and from a cop on the street. I mean, we already saw him as a child and what happened to him, and now we know he's a cop in New York, which they had hinted to in the episode before, and who the DNA match and last spotted in New York as a cop, and it just the setup was so great. But even that as a self-contained episode. And even if you didn't know who Angelo was and you're just going through all these things, it's beautiful and it's heartbreaking and it's so necessary. Oh my God. Also, not many people are talking about it online.
Okay, do you kind of feel like a lot of people are not purposely talking about things because they don't want to spoil it?
The thing I was about to talk about was Fred T.
Fred T. Remind me?
Okay, so in that episode, there's a man who throws a Molotov cocktail in a grocery store.
Yep, I know exactly what
His
you're
name
talking
is
about.
Fred.
That's right.
We later learn that his last initial is T.
Yeah.
And he runs a T and Sons grocery company. Do you want to know another FT and Sons that ran a grocery company in early New York that got arrested at a Klan rally? Fred Trump, Donald Trump's father.
Yep. You told me that when I was sitting watching the episode, and I was like, I cannot unsee this now. This is like, it's so crazy to me that, it's such a difference between watching a show like this and even watching a show like Mandalorian, but especially Titans. Like, this show, the fact that it has said the things that it said in such a smart, fully realized, fully formed way is so impressive because I genuinely thought the show was going to be dumb.
Yeah.
And it couldn't be more opposite of what I was expecting it to be. And that completely blew me away. Because when it came out, I was like, I'll wait till I hear what people say.
Well, right. I mean, the very first trailer, you kind of see like, okay, some guys in masks. And you wonder, are they going to do a white supremacy thing?
Yeah.
That could be interesting. But then you see people in costumes and some punching
Oh my God,
and
the
things
second
like
that
that.
shit starts. Oh, the trailer, yeah.
Yeah, the trailer. So you're kind of like, oh, I guess it's,
It'll be more of the same.
Great.
Watchmen.
Another interpretation of superheroes doing things. Maybe it'll throw some Watchmen in there. But it's elevated the content. It's freaking elevated it so much.
One thing that I really would like to do, and I'll probably wait to do it until after I watch the whole thing. Actually, I did hear from Hector that the official podcast that they just put out, they're doing it in like 3-episode chunks. We're doing 3 episodes per like podcast, and they're doing really extensive deep dives. And I don't know if that also, if they also go into the making of it. Something I would love to know is if Damon Lindelof and his writing team, if they wrote all 9 episodes before they started rolling, or if they kind of wrote it month to month or week to week or however they did it. Because I feel like that show is so well conceived from start to finish that I feel like they took so much time to just write out the story and then break it down episode by episode and kind of figure out who they want to focus on, how they want to reveal certain things, where they want to sprinkle seeds for things. Because there's so many things that sort of get placed in one episode, but like the thing of, Baby Kal-El being sent to Earth, like that's sprinkled in chapter 1, and then in chapter 6 you kind of see that whole thing fully realized, and it's like, dude, this is amazing.
But also like
work.
telling a story of an American hero.
Yeah.
The American hero in that universe. The first hooded superhero who then gets co-opted by white people.
Yeah.
Feels that he can't even show his own face to even save people.
right.
I mean, the whole story is just so fucking heartbreaking.
Well, chapter 6 starts with the made-for-movie story of the Minutemen, and it's like a white actor, and when he's revealed, it's and you're like, okay, why are you showing this to me? And then you jump 30 minutes later, and you're like, oh my God, are you kidding me?
The other reveal that I liked in that, which was a small one, which was finding out halfway through the episode that the woman that he's married to and has a child with is the girl, the infant that he saved in the very first episode. I love that the show is not... It's letting things happen when they should happen instead... Because there's so much information. And even finding out I gotta be careful because I can't say stuff that came up in the last episode, but the way that they're slowly revealing information is the kind of TV I like.
Yeah.
It's not giving you an info dump. It's we're going to build a world. We're going to do such good world building that you're going to see things and you're not going to understand them for 3 to 4 episodes.
Right.
But then when you do, it makes that rewatch. Like I've been rewatching each episode with you.
Yeah.
And I notice new things every single time because the world building is so tight, so well thought out that there are things that make sense, but you don't know why they make sense until later on in the story. It's very well thought out.
Ronan Unchained says, I heard by episode 2, Damon Lindelof had Ozymandias' arc completed. That's pretty amazing. That's been fun. That's been so fun going back and forth to see what Ozymandias has been up to. And the revelation of... I guess I'll spoil it.
I want to talk theories, though. You're not caught up, and I want to talk theories. I want to be like, what do you think? Do you think this is this? Do you think this is this? I totally called one of them.
Yeah.
But I can't even tell you what I called.
Damn it.
I can't tell you what I called because it would reveal something too big for you.
Shit.
I'm going to call something else right now. I think Dr. True, the Asian woman who runs the company, I think she's Ozymandias' daughter. That's what I think.
Okay.
I could be wrong. But the timeline checks out.
Okay.
She's a friggin' genius.
Yeah.
She idolizes him. There are a couple things, though, that confuse me. That I'm trying to wrap my brain around.
Which, like, honestly, because the show's
I want to
so
be able
good,
to talk to you about because there's so many things that came up, but I'm just... I can't.
Because the show is so good, it makes me so glad that there are things that, like, you're still asking questions about. Because, okay, I know I keep relating it to Titans. I'm relating it to another DC property. Jesus Christ, that show falls so flat and is so heartbreaking how, like, not... how very little payoff there is for someone who's been watching for 2 seasons. And in 7 episodes, in 7 hours, or 6 hours for me, the show has just, like... I don't know. It's going to be really hard for me to look at other DC properties on TV without thinking of Watchmen and thinking like, dude, Watchmen just set the bar.
Yeah.
Like DC, HBO, Warner Brothers, they just set the bar for where like all their superhero stuff should be in terms of its complexity and depth and just pushing the boundary.
I mean, but at the same time, like Lindelof, like
of course,
I don't like everything he's done.
Right.
But I appreciate his ambition. And when he hits, hits really well. But I appreciate that there's creators out there that are so ambitious that they just never stop trying to make groundbreaking content.
Yeah.
Even if it misses, at least they tried. And Watchmen's working. And I can't stop thinking about all these things, these theories, these ideas, like what's happening here. Like, I'm going to make you watch it tonight. You know that's happening. We have to be able to talk about what's going on and what might happen on Sunday. And I can't do that if you don't catch up, Adam.
Does that mean I have to give you 1 hour of my life?
I laid in bed and talked with Malika about it for an hour last night.
I'm sorry.
No, she's
like, I'm fucking done with you.
No, she's got her ideas too. It's a good show to create conversation and discussion about.
Fucking mad we didn't do a podcast about the show.
Because what are you going to talk about with Titans? Another disappointment.
Nothing now because it's over.
Yep. Season 2 of The Boys is in the works.
Yep.
They released a teaser trailer.
Yep. Oh, they did? Mm-hmm. Oh, I didn't even know that.
I don't know. It was official. Was it official, that teaser? I think it was. It was like a teaser that was kind of like the child growing up or... oh my god, I've already forgot the name of characters in that. I'm watching too many superhero things right now.
I know.
They're all getting mixed up in my head. But anyway.
Can I just say, though... Crisis on Infinite Earth starts on Sunday. I'm stupid excited for that.
I like you don't watch any of the other CW content, but you're like, no. I want my Superman.
I watched all the other crossovers, and I never watched, well, not never. The first crossover, I watched a lot of those shows leading up to that, and like that was really fun. But Crisis on Earth X and Crisis on, what was last year's? No, last year was Crisis on, the last two that were that happened. I watched those. without having watched all the episodes around it, I was fine.
Yeah.
Whatever.
They're fun. It's like a cartoon, and that's what I love about it.
Yeah.
It's like a cartoon. It's like
Yeah.
just a cool exploration. They're great.
Exactly. Oh, Elseworlds was last year. That's right.
Yeah.
And so I'm super pumped to watch Crisis. And I've had a lot of people ask me, if they need to watch everything from like last year to this year for the whole setup. No. If you don't want to watch, the last 8 weeks or the last 4, however many weeks it's been of like Batwoman, Flash, Arrow, Legends, Supergirl, you don't really need to. You can probably find some good recap on YouTube that recaps what's happened and what the deal that Oliver made with the Monitor, and then just kind of jump into Crisis on Infinite Earths. Like I'm really just there for it to just kind of touch on my heartstrings of all the things that like I love about DC, which is legacy and previous generations of characters. They released 3 photos, and it's Brandon Routh Superman, like chokeholding Tyler Hoechlin Superman, Kevin Conroy and Ruby Rose in the Batcave, and then John Wesley Shipp and Grant Gustin's Flashes in one image. And I'm like, dude, this is DC right here. This is legacy. This is what it's all about.
Something that I will say is I know we're talking a lot about TV.
Yeah. Which we don't do enough of, I feel like, now.
Yes.
We're getting better at it.
What I will say is this is a comic book show.
Yeah.
And what I'm hoping is you watch some of these shows and it makes you want to dive back into comics.
Oh my God, are you kidding me?
Because even though we're talking about some of these stories as if they're like crazy unique and all this stuff going on, there are stories being told in comic books that you will never see on TV. TV's not there yet.
Yeah.
I think Watchmen is the closest. Watchmen is the closest I've felt to watching what I see as a comic book show or even a comic book movie, because it's just so vivid and graphic and depth. It's got so many layers. It's, I think, the closest to an actual comic book show, and being able to capture some of those things that comic books are able to capture.
Yeah.
But some amazing books are out right now. And I realized something today. There was a time, I guess it was 2 or 3 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, I kind of had given up on Marvel. I canceled a bunch of my subscriptions. I started reading only indie books. And I realized today when I was going through my pool and I was going through everything, I was like, wait a minute. When did Marvel start getting really good again? Because I have a ton of Marvel books in my pool right now. And it reminds me of back when Marvel Now first kicked off. And I was talking to a comic book store owner today about it. And he had some wild theories. I won't repeat all of them because we're in the entertainment industry and I don't want to start talking trash. But a couple of those theories were interesting. And how, like, even back when Marvel Now started, though, and you had Matt Fraction's Hawkeye, Mark Waid's Daredevil, Charles Seale's She-Hulk, and you had these, like, really singular, awesome stories, but they were isolated. And Marvel's doing something right now that it hasn't been able to do in a really long time, where it feels like each book is super unique, but they're also all communicating with each other without having to be an event book. So Donny Cates' Venom ties into Thor. Thor ties into Venom. So Jason Aaron and Donny Cates obviously are talking to each other. Jason Hickman decides he's going to take over the X-Men universe. Jonathan Hickman takes over the X-Men universe, and all of the writers that are working on X-Men right now very clearly are working together to tell a unified story without it being an event book. And you get to read all of them together and see all this way, like, the world building is starting to feel really fresh again and more isolated, like Valiant does. And why I like Valiant so much is I feel like I can follow the world that they live in. And there are a couple outliers. I love Daredevil. I have a hard time placing it in the world with everything else. But I also don't see Daredevil showing up in all the other books, so it kind of makes sense that maybe that is what's happening.
Yeah.
And it very much feels in line with his own story. But Marvel's putting out some amazing stuff right now. And I'm just over the moon excited about how good Zdarsky's writing on Daredevil is right now, and the art teams that he's been able to pull together for each issue. Al Ewing's Immortal Hulk and the art teams he's been putting together have been... That's what I've spent most of my break doing, is going back to issue 1 of the Immortal Hulk and reading all the way through. And it is so good. I would have never, ever expected a Hulk book or an Al Ewing book And this is something I was talking to the comic book store owner about, is you have a lot of people working at Marvel right now who are firing on all cylinders. And when you looked at their work in the past, you would have never assumed they had this in them. So you have to start questioning things in regards to, okay, they were always amazingly creative and talented people. Who was holding them back? And what changed at Marvel to let everyone just go, you know what? Creative freedom. There was a lot of restriction, and now it feels like creative freedom is part of the company again, and people are, and you don't have like one mastermind. You don't have one Bendis over everyone saying this is how everything has to work.
Right.
It feels like everyone's getting to be like their own little mastermind, you know, and you get your Silver Surfer Black, but still ties into Venom, that still ties into Thor.
Yeah.
And you get your Jason Aaron Thor, and you get your Chip Zdarsky Daredevil. It's absolutely wild. And Hulk, I cannot stress this enough. Hulk is becoming one of my favorite books of the year. Maybe we should do a best of the year episode.
I feel like that would be something. So when we do Hyper Heroes, the last episode of the year, we always do our top 10 movies or shows.
Yeah.
And now we'll be able to incorporate TV because we're doing so much more of it. But I would love to do top 10 books of the year.
That book as a whole, as I'm reading through the whole thing, I'm just like, this is genius.
Yeah.
It's terrifying. The art is so graphic, and it's like body horror at times. But the psychological questions that are presented are some of the most interesting we've ever got to deal with Bruce Banner and the Hulk, and the relation to each other and the relation to the world. And the way Hulk sees himself, and the questions that are being asked about Hulk's purpose as an agent of the Earth itself, and why the Earth maybe needs or doesn't need. I mean, they literally say he's the devil. Hulk is the devil, and it's so good. And I can't praise that book enough. And same goes for my pick of the week. We can get right into it since it is the 5:30 mark. My pick of the week this week, and we're going to be giving this away at the end of the show. So if one of the mods want to be able to run a giveaway for me at the end of the show, that would be great. It's going to be Daredevil Through Hell. This is issue number 14. And this run has been so much fun to read and to go on this journey with Matt Murdock. I'm going to pull up some pages for you all. Hey, you haven't read any of this, right?
No, I haven't.
What is your relationship with Daredevil as a character?
Not that vast, because I didn't really grow up reading Marvel. So most of my, let's see, what's the I'm trying to think. I read Man Without Fear. Not a whole lot, honestly. I feel like that's my biggest exposure to Daredevil outside of any live action media that he's been in.
I feel like it's a character that has such promise.
Yeah.
That when used correctly, just like Peter Parker and Spider-Man, like, can have some of the best stories told about a normal guy that happens to be extraordinary and how they deal with the world around them. And what makes Daredevil so interesting compared to everyone else is he has his own values based on religion and his upbringing that kind of weight him down and make him a more grounded character within the world. And there's a time when certain writers do it, you feel kind of like, ugh, eye roll. Okay, we get it. Another, he's at a church again, and there's this imagery that keeps being repeated. But then I love it when writers and the art teams take it in a more subversive route. He's not living that path, but it's always there. It's in the back of his mind. It's always a part of who he is, but it doesn't mean that it's front and center. And when they put that more in the background and make it just a part of who he is, it can be really interesting and add a level to a character that you don't see in a lot of other superheroes. And this issue, like every issue that's come out in this run, the Through Hell run, at this point, Wilson Fisk is the mayor. He recently killed a guy in cold blood. And
Sounds about
Wilson
right.
had to cover it up. Not Wilson, Wesley had to cover it up for him. And the politics that are going on there are really interesting. There's currently a gang war happening in Hell's Kitchen. The cops are all being paid off, and they're not allowed to go into Hell's Kitchen. And we have our police officer, who's kind of one of the main characters of this run, Chip Zdarsky's run, who has become a very important character in this book, and him and Daredevil finally have a sit-down discussion. And I've been waiting this for a long time, and it's really great. There's a lot of interesting things that come up in the conversation. You get to learn a little bit more about the character. But we're also finally starting to see Matt regain a sense of control. Mm-hmm. He's been really down and out on himself for a little while because he killed a guy. And
that'll do that to you.
He's been hanging that weight really, really heavy over his head.
Yeah.
And he's sloppy. You know, he was in this run starts after he was in an accident. And he's just tries to go back into being Daredevil, and he's not ready. And his punches aren't hitting right, his kicks aren't hitting right. And this book explores a lot about how he's so good at what he does. Mm-hmm. And just like Spider-Man, when it gets explored sometimes, like a lot of this character is knowing how to pull a punch, not how to punch.
Right.
You know, he could
kill.
Exactly. He could kill just about anyone he comes up to. He has to be good enough to not.
Right.
Because human beings are fragile.
Yeah.
And that's what his sloppiness makes him kill someone. I love exploring that as well. So we get to get their sit down finally in this issue, but we also get to check back in with Wilson Fisk and the current situation with the gang war that's happening. Matt also does some pretty shitty stuff in this book. Like he sleeps with a married woman who is also married to a member of a crime family. It's heavy. It's a heavy run, but it's just so well written. And we're now to the point where it feels like the gang war is about to just explode between all the factions in Hell's Kitchen, and because Wilson is being backed into a corner, mm-hmm. that's when he's the most terrifying. Yeah. And when his animal instincts come out and he can't control his rage. So overall, I give this book like a 10 out of 10 this week. It's my pick of the week. But it is tied. I'm going to say it's tied with another pick of the week that I didn't know to call my pick of the week until right before the show started when I read it.
Interesting.
So I hadn't read it yet. But let's get into some of the books you checked out this week.
Yeah, so I read Napoleon Dynamite #2. I picked up the first issue just sort of on a whim, and I thought, like, I don't really know. It's Napoleon Dynamite. Why would you make a Napoleon Dynamite comic book? But it's actually been really, really a fun read, and I love the artwork. I was showing you some of the artwork. They do really interesting things where instead of putting things inside of panels, they'll literally break out a location and build it out as its own little set piece, and then have dialogue and interactions with characters. And it reads mostly like a traditional book, but it kind of breaks the barrier of being panel to panel, and it's more just kind of like a page full of artwork, and they do a really good job with the bubbles and
it's really fun.
All the dialogue really directing like where you should be reading. I love how it just kind of like breaks everything. It doesn't have so many like it's not dependent on any of that stuff. And you know, it wasn't until you and I started talking about comics that you showed me some stuff. I think it was Silver Surfer Black, where they break a lot of like the panels and stuff. And I was like, man, this is like a really interesting and fun way to do it. But this is basically part 2 of where we left off. I think it was last month or the month before.
It's probably a once-a-month book.
Yeah, probably a once-a-month book. And it's more about the impeachment. Like, they're trying to get Pedro impeached because they think that he cheated during the election. And right now they're really trying to figure out, like, okay, who framed him? Who did it? And knowing Napoleon Dynamite, as we all do, it's probably going to be something very silly.
Very dumb.
When it's revealed. But, like, that plays into Napoleon Dynamite, I feel like. And then you have this podcast team who's going around and interviewing people trying to find out who murdered somebody in the town. And Uncle Rico has kind of become suspect number 1. And there's some really fun interactions with the characters. And it's definitely written so well that, like, when you read it, you can't help but read it in the voice of the characters from the movie. Like, they do a really good job of capturing that. And not that that's necessary, like, they have a good foundation to sort of build that off of.
This is an awesome spread.
I love this. This is my favorite.
Great.
It's so good. And I love how they do it. And they do a really good job of really using the words to kind of like dictate where you should be reading, so you never lose track. But I really am loving just the tone, the art, the playfulness, the silliness. It really does feel like Napoleon Dynamite, the movie. And and then some, because with a comic book you can do so much more and you can exaggerate so much more. I'm really liking it. It's weird. I never would have thought that Napoleon Dynamite would have been a comic book that I'd like so much, but here we are.
Yeah.
It's fun.
And then you also checked out James Bond #1,
Yes.
much in the spirit of the trailer dropping.
Yeah.
And
Which, like, good on them.
there was also a new volume that dropped in the store today, too.
There was, yeah.
I think that was the one Greg Pak was writing on, but this is
Gotcha.
another reboot.
Yes.
And this is coming out by Dynamite. They've been putting out
Mm-hmm.
James Bond books for a while. They're really interesting because sometimes these Bond books will put together a crazy writing and art team and be like, yo, we're going to do 5 issues with this crazy team.
Yeah.
And you'll pick up, you're like, holy fuck, this is great.
Yeah.
This is really good.
Yeah, I didn't really know what to expect from this. I've never read a James Bond comic book before. And to be completely honest, we were going to do the trailer reaction today, and I thought, like, at first I wasn't sure if we were going to tie it into this show, if we are going to do it as its own independent thing. And I thought, well, there's probably got to be a James Bond comic book somewhere. I had no idea that there had already been a pretty decent amount of comic books before. And it makes sense that you would drop #1 on the day the trailer comes out. So I think that was good strategic planning. But the one thing that I thought was interesting, there's not really a whole lot of James Bond in this first issue. It's a lot of setup. We get to see him in the beginning to sort of establish, like, here's James, he's in this. But then the other 19 pages or so, you're following this insurance worker who basically comes to the discovery that a painting that's in this museum is a fake, and they need to basically figure out where the original painting is.
So it's an art heist.
So it's an art heist comic book. So you start to see them start picking up the breadcrumbs of, like, well, where was it last? Where has it been? You know, they find out that there's a certain person that they could probably get some information from, so they go on the hunt to try to find this person. That person is not where they think they are, so they end up at this bar. And then it's not really a spoiler, but at the very, like, last panel, you see, like, James Bond is also in the bar, which alludes to, like, okay, James Bond is probably also involved in this case somehow. So it was an interesting start. I guess I was just expecting more James Bond. And he's really not in it only for the first page and the last page. But I'm intrigued enough by, like, the story to see and just a general interest in James Bond himself to see kind of like where this goes. Like, there was moments where I thought James Bond was disguising himself as a different character, but no, this is in fact James Bond. So nothing really has happened yet. It's really just set up. So I'm curious to see what happens with issue 2 and beyond.
Okay.
It was fun. I liked it.
All right. If you get into it, I could recommend some other Bond books you should check out.
I'd be down.
Yeah, there's some good ones out there.
I think, like, my objective before the movie comes out is to rewatch all of Daniel Craig's movies. I'd love to read some of the books, the comic books, because I feel like
we should go back and rewatch all the Daniel Craig movies.
Yeah, I would love to.
Like I said, I can't even remember.
Casino Royale I remember the most because I've seen it. I probably watched it at least twice a year since it came out.
I could probably end up quoting the whole movie.
Yeah.
That one, fresh.
My God, when Mads Mikkelsen hits him in the nuts with that thing, and he's like, "Ooh." Oh my God, he makes fun of him for scratching his balls. I'm like, oh my God.
Oh my
That was
gosh.
the moment I was like, Daniel Craig might be my favorite James Bond.
Oh, I was sold from the first 10 minutes when they're doing the parkour chase.
Oh, the African rundown?
And
That was incredible.
The other guy, like, jumps through and he just
goes through the wall.
Goes through the wall.
Oh
I was
my
like in the
God.
theater, like, this is my shit.
It's so good, man.
I was like, this is the Bond I want.
Yeah, it was that was the way to open up a reboot of Bond.
And I honestly think that that's something that the filmmakers should have kept doing to differentiate him from characters like John Wick and even Ethan Hunt.
Yeah.
Because Ethan Hunt is not that.
No.
Daniel Craig has this unique ability to be this suave, very, like, sexy guy, but then at the same time, he's a tank.
Yeah.
And I feel like they should have played more into that in all the
Ethan
other
Hunt
movies.
is, like, anxious all the time.
Yeah, Ethan
like
Hunt.
I'm stressed just when he's like calm.
Right, Ethan Hunt's
With
a
Bond, I'm
scrawny
like,
guy.
oh, all right. We're getting like the poker game in Casino Royale is just like, I don't know dick about that game. I've never been so sucked in to card games. It was incredible.
I want to see like a James Bond, like he punches a guy in the face and it's one of those shots where you follow the face down to the floor and it gives you that impact of like, fuck.
Man.
Because he's fucking tank, man.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's something I want to talk about now. X-Men. We didn't get to talk about it last week.
Yeah.
There was a couple more books that came out last week. There were 3 books that dropped this week.
I know, I saw those.
X-Men, Marauders, and Excalibur.
Yeah.
And the only X book I was having issues with, actually, that's not true. I have 2 X books right now. 1 X book, but 2 issues that I'm not super into, and that's Fallen Angels. If you love those characters, it might be for you. As of right now, Fallen Angels is the bottom for me. X-Force issue 1, I wasn't into.
Oh, yeah, you mentioned that, yeah.
Issue 2 is really good. And I'm so glad I went back and gave it another shot. Issue 2, I'm like, okay, all right, I'm into what this book's going to be. I'm super into this relationship. It's basically Logan and Quentin Quire going on a hunting mission to find who killed Domino and who killed the professor. And it's really fucked up and cool. And basically what I'm seeing is every one of these books, if you look at them as a whole, are putting together a tapestry of all the new villains that will be threatening the X-Men moving forward. Everything's new and different. And now that the X-Men can't fight each other, who are their enemies? And in this book, it's horticulture. No joke. No joke. I'm going to pull up a frame for you. Okay, right here. 80-year-old woman, 60-year-old woman, 60-year-old woman, 70-year-old woman. It's a bunch of old scientists.
So now Jonathan Hickman's tweet makes sense to me.
Okay.
Wow.
So, this scene too. There was a scene between Emma Frost and Jean Grey that was absolutely like, And there's some weird stuff going on here. The way Scott talks to Jean and the way Scott talks to Emma, there's a lot of weird... Like, Jonathan Hickman's found a way to make us all, like, really, like, yo, who was Cyclops fucking? Is it Logan? Is it Jean? Is it Emma? Is it all of them?
Oh, my God.
There's a lot of weird tension going on there. But... every one of these books is setting up new villains for the X-Men. And they're not getting resolved, which I like. It's setting them up and being like, here's the people that will threaten Krakoa in the future.
Yeah.
Excalibur is the most different of all the books. I will say Excalibur is very much kind of like Once and Future, and it's got a very King Arthur vibe to it. It's all taking place in London, but it is tying Apocalypse in a really interesting way, and we get to go down that path a little bit. But I actually really liked... At first, I thought this old women thing is going to be really weird. It works, and it's really interesting because it's giving the X-Men another instance of, like, you may think you're gods. Do not discredit human ingenuity and underestimate human ingenuity when a bunch of old women just kick your ass. They were able to trick Krakoa. They were able to, like... do all these things, and they're scientists, and they're like, we will eventually figure out how Krakoa works, and we'll make it bend to our will, because it's a plant.
Yeah.
And they're like, this is what we do.
Wow.
So it was interesting, and they do get their ass kicked by these old women. Like, it's funny. But X-Force, X-Men, Excalibur, and Marauders, I think I would say at the top of my list is X-Men, second Marauders. After X-Force number 2, X-Force might be up there, and then Excalibur, and then I would put Fallen Angels at the bottom. I'm not really into Fallen Angels at all so far. I hope it turns itself around. But all of these books right now are just so good. And Marauders especially only gets more and more interesting. The first issue is a fun pirate romper. You know, we get to meet the team and what they do. Second and third issue of Marauders, it's political intrigue. And we're finding out that even though the mutants are all together, there's obviously inner turmoil. There's going to be, which we knew was going to happen the second they set up the Quiet Council. You knew that was going to happen. That not all these people are going to get along.
Of course not. You cannot put all those characters together in that way and expect there to be some sort of peace.
You put Sebastian Shaw and Emma Frost together too. They have a history.
That's tension.
And Marauders is exploring that history in a really cool way. And what I love about between issue 2 and 3 is issue 2 sets up the relationship between Emma and Sebastian, and the way that Emma talks to Sebastian. You just believe everything she says because she's your point of view for that book. You don't question it. And Sebastian's getting so angry, and you're just like, yeah, fuck this guy. And then issue 3, they give you his perspective, and you find out that what she thought was happening was not what was happening at all. And it just adds so many layers, and it's basically become a political intrigue book, which I was not expecting.
Yeah.
That's about pirating and controlling the market share of the drug around the world.
Interesting.
And who's going to hold that control because there's so much money involved.
Right.
And
It's like a pharmaceutical company's story come to life.
Yeah.
It's so weird.
It's really cool. And X-Men has been... I think it's only gotten better too. The first issue was the weirdest one, and now it's just getting better and better. But X-Force 2 really turns it around. So I'm just so excited for the future of X-Men right now. They just keep introducing new threats, new enemies, and it's like X-Men is brand new again. And it's just all these new things.
Are you reading it in the order that they're like meant to be read in, or are you kind of jumping around and doing it your own way? Like, do you think it's best experience how they tell you, like,
yes.
read this, read that, read this,
Yes.
read that?
And the only book that will confuse you a little bit is Marauders #3, because the book itself is jumping in time. And they're not giving you a clear timeline within the books.
Gotcha.
Sometimes it feels like the island just started, and other times it feels like the island has been there for months. And we're months into them being a sovereign nation.
Yeah.
So... Issue 3 definitely makes that complicated because, like, Sebastian Shaw is talking to Xavier. Xavier helps bring his son back to life. But you already know Xavier's dead because of X-Force 1 and stuff like that. So the timeline, you're like, oh, this must have been a week ago. And you only really follow it by, like, one line of dialogue of his son saying, like, I'll meet you back on the island in a couple weeks. And then he's back on the island. You're like, okay, so time has passed. Oh yeah, New Mutants. I'm sorry, I forgot about New Mutants. New Mutants is fucking great. It's so good. Oh, I would put that up there right under Marauders. Only because issue 2 and 3 of Marauders were on point. But I know, because Hickman's doing New Mutants, that its importance is just going to keep rising. I'm so glad he brought Sam and Sunspot, like Cannonball and Sunspot, back together because they were part of his Avengers run. And I knew he would want those two characters to be back together, so I'm glad that's happening. I forgot about New Mutants. Also great. Freaking crazy time.
So there's now 6 books?
Yeah, I guess it's 6. Dang.
So nuts how
good.
It's so nuts how we went from reading, two books at the same time every single week, and now there's 6 books. Jesus Christ.
And they're great.
Yeah.
All of them are so creative and different from anything I expected from X-Men books. Like, I would usually expect, like, one X-Men book a year to be really unique and different, but all 6 of these are very different. Even Fallen Angels is different, but I'm just not feeling it. It's just not my kind of book.
Well, I think it's super impressive, too, if you can have 6 books, and all 6 books are good to certain levels. Like, it'd be different if you had 6 books, and you're like, this one is excellent, this one is pretty good, this one's not bad, and this one's just trash. Like, I feel like the fact that, like, they're all consistently, like, good to a certain extent is pretty great.
So if you're not reading X-Men right now, you should definitely get on it. All the books are really interesting, really good. As far as other books that I checked out this week, I caught up on Strange Skies over East Berlin by Jeff Loveness, with art by Alessandro Esterin. How do I say it? I thought issue 1 was, like, superb. Issue 2 and 3 are very heady with little substance. A lot of repeated imagery, a lot of repeated words. And I'm anxious to see where it goes from here. But it's still good enough for me to keep reading. Let's see what else I checked out. I'm caught up on Nobody Is in Control. I picked up all the 2099 books because I'm stupid. And I'm gonna read all of them. I'm real dumb. Let's see. I caught up on Everything #4. That book is so freaking weird in the best way. Everything is still really good and super weird. I think that's all. Oh, this was my other pick of the week, so I'm glad I saved this for last. 20XX. New book with art by Jonathan Luna and writing shared between Lauren Keeley and Jonathan Luna. I'm a huge fan of Jonathan Luna's stories. The Luna brothers in general have made some of my favorite comics, but I've never been super sold on their art.
Okay.
It grows on you over time, but Jonathan Luna's stories are awesome. One of these days, I'll let you read my entire 30-book stack of Girls.
Oh, yeah.
It's a trip.
Yeah,
It's
I remember you telling me that, yeah.
But this book, I didn't know was dropping today, and it is tight. I think Jonathan Luna's art is the best it's been. I think it works really well in black and white. It actually reminds me a lot of Junji Ito with the rendering. A little bit. It hasn't gone to horror yet, but it works really well in black and white. This is a really interesting book. It takes place a little in the future.
Anchorage, Alaska.
And, you know, obviously climate has hit. The book starts in a really interesting way where it's basically from a character's perspective saying, like, how privileged we are and how stupid we are to keep thinking that, like, every day that goes by, all the horrible things that happen in the world, they won't happen to me. It's always somebody else. It won't be me. And you just keep going on with your life. And it just kind of sets that all up. And then out of nowhere, she's getting a job promotion. And you're not learning too much about the world. And it just goes right into it. Like, job promotion. Hey, how's it going? Blah, blah. This is great. You're like, why are they wearing masks? This is strange. And then just like that, she starts bleeding from her eyes. And the way they talk about it, why it's happening, is so fucked up in like a really cool and interesting way, which helps you understand as a reader, this has been happening on a mass scale, and the whole world has changed because of it. So the second she starts bleeding from the eyes, and they're like, get help, she just starts being like, will you take care of my cat? You know, and she's not like freaking out. It's just like, everyone understands. Accepting. You can get this virus. Yeah, it says confirmed Bethel virus. I promise you don't need to worry about anything. Okay, just don't lose hope. And she's just like, why would I be hope? Like,
oh my God.
You know, and they tell you only 1% of people in the world survive this virus.
Jesus.
So that's how it starts. And you're like, holy crap, this is fucking crazy.
Yeah.
But then she survives. But after she survives, the story just keeps deepening. And
are those people dying around her? Yeah. Oh my God.
Only 1% of people survive.
God damn.
Just to give you the cliff notes, because you kind of learn these things slowly. Like I said, I love this kind of story development. If you survive, the virus has become a symbiote into a spot in your brain, and you are now considered an SYS, or an SYM, a SIM. And society looks down on SIMs. They're the 1% that survive. Which is interesting because they're basically now superheroes.
Right.
This virus, they're immune for life now because they survived. Jesus. And the virus has attached himself to the brain and unlocked telekinetic powers. And they go through this whole thing of like, now that you have these abilities, you have to register them within a certain amount of time with the Department of Justice.
Here are all these extra responsibilities now, like...
You survived, great. But you are now, like, officially recognized as STS. Positive STS stands for Selective Telekinetic Sensing. I know, am I free to go now? It may take up to 2 weeks for your abilities to manifest. Once they do, you will know what type of material your virus imprinted on. You must report this to your STS imprint to the Department of Identification and take a brief training course. And it's illegal to use them after you get them.
Good Lord.
So just to sum this up for you, this gets crazy. Yeah. Everyone has a different thing that they can control telekinetically. Hers happens to be skin. So that's fucked up. And you find out that this virus released because the permafrost got destroyed. When the permafrost thawed around the world from global warming, it released an ancient bacteria. The book's awesome. So that's my second pick of the week. That's crazy. Thank you guys so much for watching Comics and Coffee. I have a challenge for YouTube right now. YouTube people. You're going to be watching this later. I have a challenge for you. You guys talk in the chat, which is awesome when we're talking about TV shows. And the second we start talking about comic books, maybe 1 or 2 comments the rest of the show, which means none of you are reading comics. Only a couple of you. So I have a challenge for you. If you like these TV shows we're talking about, if you love superheroes and movies, go to your local comic book store, pick up one of the books we're talking about, and then talk to us about it either on Twitter or in the chat room next week. We want to know that you're reading comics. These stories are birthed there, and some of them you will never, ever see on television. You can only experience them in this form, and you owe it to yourself to check them out Absolutely awesome.
So good.
Go do it. Thank you guys so much. People on Twitch, enjoy He Left It Dead starting in just a minute. Bye-bye.
Bye.
I still. Can we talk about this Ghostbringer guy?
Yeah, can we talk about this because
this isn't my drop.
I
This
have
is
lessons
these
to
guys
teach
that
him
I
too.
had on standby, but I gotta make sure they're
Wait,
not.
what do you?